Hey guys, it's Cass. Welcome to another bookish video. I'm here today with my Chicago book haul. If you didn't see my last video, me and my friends took a long weekend trip to Chicago. That was my first time there, and the one non-negotiable thing that I had on my list of things that I wanted to do was to visit some bookstores, and visit some bookstores we did. I have no idea how I managed to stuff all of these books into my carry-on suitcase, but they all made it back home to Pittsburgh with me, and I am really excited about all of them. We went to 3 different bookstores in Chicago, and I included a tiny little bit of footage in the vlog last week, but I did not take as much footage in any of the bookstores as I wanted to. One of them actually didn't allow you to take photos and videos, and then the other ones, I was just so caught up in looking at all the books and just like having the experience of being there that I just didn't really bother with taking any videos or anything. But trust me, they were incredible experiences. And I just wanted to say, since we're talking about buying books, and I think right now is the big like Amazon sale or whatever, just a friendly reminder that Amazon is able to sell their books for so cheap because they literally sell them at a loss. They lose money on them, and that puts bookstores out of business, which sucks. So I just wanted to say to support your local indie bookstores if you can. If you can't, support your local library, buy books used, trade with your friends. There's so many other alternatives to getting books to read besides buying them from Amazon, and I just think it's important to know how harmful it is to like the publishing economy, the way that Amazon sells their books, because it literally puts bookstores out of business, and the world would be a very terrible place without them. So yeah, just support your library, support indie bookstores, and that's all I'm gonna say on that. Let's get into the books. So I'm actually gonna go in reverse order of the order of the stores that we visited. So the last store that we visited was Volumes Book Cafe, which was in Wicker Park, which is where we stayed, and I really enjoyed it there because they had a coffee shop attached, and I feel like a bookstore coffee shop combo is just undefeated. The coffee was really delicious and the vibes were just wonderful. The selection was really interesting. It wasn't 100% on par with my tastes personally, but they had a mix of new stuff and used stuff, and it was just like an eclectic mix, which is always fun to see. So I got one book from there, and that was The Superrationals by Stephanie lacava. I picked this up because I heard Pleasures of the Text here on YouTube talk about this in a video a little while ago, and I know Stephanie lacava has another pretty popular book out right now. I think it's called I Fear My Pain Interests You. But I found this and it was indeed used, so I grabbed it. And the description for this says, over the course of a few days in the fall of 2015, the sophisticated and awkward, wry and beautiful Mathilde upends her tidy world. She takes a short leave from her job at one of New York's leading auction houses and follows her best friend Gretchen on an impromptu trip to Paris. While there, she confronts her late mother's hidden life, attempts to rein in Gretchen's encounters with an aloof and withholding sometime boyfriend. Reeling between New York, Paris, Munich, London, and Berlin, The Superrationals is an erotic and darkly comic story about female friendship, set at the intersection between counterculture and the multi-million-dollar art industry. Mathilde takes short, perceptive notes on artworks as a way to organize her own chaotic thoughts in life. Featuring a bitchy gossip chorus within a larger carousel of voices, The Superrational coolly surveys the international art and media worlds while exploring game theory, the uncanny, and psychoanalysis. Written in the young girl tradition of Michelle Bernstein's All the King's Horses, Bernadette Corporation's Rena Spalling's, and Natasha Stagg's surveys. Never heard of any of those, so that will be interesting to look up later. The Superrationals confronts the complexity of building narrative in life and on the page and the instability that lies at the heart of everything. So this sounds like it's going to be fun and funny, and I am very excited to have my hands on a copy of it. I've never seen a copy of it in person before, which I think is a theme for a lot of the books in this haul. So yeah. The second store that we visited was also in Wicker Park, so within walking distance, and that was Myopic Books. And wow, what an experience in there. It is a used bookstore, and I've never seen so many books in one place at once. It was actually insane how many books they had managed to fit into their space. I can't even describe it to you. This is the one that didn't allow for pictures and videos, and I kind of get why, because it would be really annoying to try and navigate around people that are like stopping and filming and taking pictures and stuff. But yeah, it was crazy. They had like these super narrow aisles, and it was just books from floor to ceiling. They had shelves stuffed in every part of the store that they could manage, and there was like an upstairs section as well with even more books. There was also a basement that had books in it. It was really crazy and kind of overwhelming for someone like me, because whenever I go to a bookstore, I look at every single book on every single shelf, more or less. Like, I usually stay within like the fiction and like essay, memoir sections, but I will stand there and like start at the top left corner of the shelf and like go down each row and look at everything, just because I'm so worried I'm gonna miss something that I want to pick up. So definitely wasn't able to do that at this store, but they had some really cool things that you probably can't really find anywhere else. So it was a really interesting experience. I bought 3 books there. I had had a couple more, but I put them back, and it's probably for the best that I did, because we have a lot more books to talk about here. The first one that I picked up at Myopic is one that I actually have already read, and that is The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante. I read this digitally last year when I was on vacation at the beach, and let me tell you guys, this is the perfect like beachy summer read, because the setting is on a beach. And I feel like this is also a really good introduction to Ferrante's work. So whenever I found the copy of it, I knew that I wanted to pick it up and have it on my shelves, because I've really been enjoying the Neapolitan novels, and I feel like she's going to be an important author for me the more that I read from her. So this is about Lita, a middle-aged divorcee who's alone for the first time in years after her 2 adult daughters leave home to live with their father in Toronto. Oh, it's thundering. Enjoying an unexpected sense of liberty, she heads to the Ionian coast for vacation, but she soon finds herself intrigued by Nina, a young mother on the beach, eventually striking up a conversation with her. After Nina confides a dark secret, one seemingly trivial occurrence leads to events that could destroy Nina's family in this arresting novel by the author of New York Times bestselling Neapolitan novels, which has sold millions of copies and been adapted into an HBO series, which I am wanting to watch that series. I think that is something that I'm going to tackle. I'm not a big TV person, but I do want to watch it. My bookmark from Myopic just fell out of here. I absolutely love this. Super cute. This is the back. Love to collect bookmarks. I think I have a bunch in the books here, so I am going to start a little pile for those. But yeah, this was the first one that I picked up there. Next, I picked up Green Girl by Kate Zambreno. I read her book Drifts last year, and I thought that it was fine. It is one that I am planning on rereading at some point this year, just to see if it hits different for me this time around. It's one of those books that I felt like on paper it sounded perfect for me, but in practice and actually reading it, it wasn't my favorite. So I also grabbed this from her because I feel like there's something there that I can get into with her work. The description for this one says, with the fierce emotional and intellectual power of such classics as Jean Rhys's Good Morning Midnight, Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, and Clarice Lispector's The Hour of the Star, Kate Zambreno's novel Green Girl is a provocative, sharply etched portrait of a young woman navigating the spectrum between anomie, A-N-O-M-I-E, Anami, I don't know. I'm not looking it up either. First published in 2011 in a small press edition, Green Girl was named one of the best books of the year by critics including Dennis Cooper and Roxane Gay. In Book Forum, James Greer called it ambitious, blah 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 blah. Okay. Yeah. Zambreno's heroine, Ruth, is a young American in London, kin to Jean Seberg Gamins. I feel like I've looked that word up before. And contemporary celebutantes, by day spritzing perfume at the department store she calls horrids, by night trying desperately to navigate a world colored by the unwanted gaze of others and the uncertainty of her own self-regard. Ruth, the Green Girl, joins the canon of young people existing in that important, frightening, and exhilarating period of drift and anxiety between youth and adulthood, and her story is told through the eyes of one of the most surprising and unforgettable narrators in recent fiction, a voice at once distanced and maternal, indulgent yet blackly funny. And the result is a piercing yet humane meditation on alienation, consumerism, the city, self-awareness, and desire by a novelist who has been compared with Jean Rhys, Virginia Woolf, and Alfred Jelinek. So that's some high praise and some really great comparisons. I'm curious to get to this and read more from Kate Zambreno. The last book that I got at Myopic was The Coming Bad Days by Sarah Bernstein. I believe her book Study for Obedience has kind of gotten really popular recently, but I have seen this one floating around online a little bit too, and I haven't read anything from Sarah Bernstein, so I wanted to try this one out. The description for this one says, a woman leaves the man she lives with and moves to a low stone cottage in a university town. She joins an academic department and, high up in her office on the 13th floor, begins a research project on the poet Paul Celan. She knows nothing of Celan, still less of her new neighbors or colleagues. She is in self-imposed exile, hoping to find dignity in her loneliness. Like everywhere, the abiding feeling in the city is one of paranoia. The weather is deteriorating, the ordinary lives of women are in peril, and an unexplained curfew has been imposed. But then she meets Clara, a woman who is her exact opposite, decisive, productive, and assured. As their friendship grows in intimacy, Clara suggests another way of living, until an act of violence threatens to sever everything between them. Reminiscent of Thomas Bernhard, Rachel Cusk, and Gwendolyn Riley, The Coming Bad Days is a penetrating portrait of feminine vulnerability and cruelty. It announces the arrival of a startling new voice in fiction, intelligent, brutal, sure, and devastatingly funny. Ooh, Rachel Cusk comparison. We always love to see that. Sounds kind of like, I was gonna say magical realism. That's not the word that I was looking for. Maybe like a little bit of like a weird alternate universe with like a curfew and bad things happening. Really, honestly, not that alternate, but yeah, very intrigued by this one. And we've made it to the last bookstore, which was actually the first bookstore that we visited, which was Exile in Bookville. This is one that I included a little bit of footage of in the vlog, and you guys, I'm gonna say it, I ride or die for White Whale here in Pittsburgh. I love them to death, but Exile in Bookville might be like tied for best bookstore that I've ever been to. Oh my gosh, I could have spent so much more time in there just simply for the vibes. Their selection was so incredible, and that is why I ended up buying, like, it's raining really hard. I'm so sorry if you can hear that. I think there's an issue with my gutters because water loves to just like stream off of them and hit my windows really hard and really loud. So hopefully that's not too annoying. It's probably really annoying. Let me check. Let me see. Okay, the rain didn't sound as bad as I thought that it did whenever I listened to it back, so we're just gonna power through and just think of it as like some nice white noise in the background. But as I was saying, the selection at Exile in Bookville was just the best that I've ever seen. So much cool stuff from like smaller indie presses that I've never seen in the wild, and it was so great. I could have spent so much time there. My friends finished their shopping and ended up going and like sitting outside of the store waiting for me. The store is like located like a couple floors up on this, I don't know if it's like an academic building or what it was, but there was like a big space in like the hallway outside, and they were sitting there on a bench waiting for me, and they were like, okay, show us what you got. So I did like a little book haul for them, and they were like, that's an insane amount of books to purchase. The guy at the checkout counter did say that he's seen people buy more though. So the first one that I picked up was The Illiterate by Agota Kristof. This was translated, I'm not sure from what language, from Hungarian, I believe, by Nina Bogan. And the description for this says, narrated in a series of stark, brief vignettes, The Illiterate is Agota Kristof's memoir of her childhood, her escape from Hungary in 1956 with her husband and small child, her early years working in factories in Switzerland, and the writing of her first novel, The Notebook. Few writers can convey so much in so little space. This is a very tiny book. That's also a theme here. So many of the books that I got at Exile and Bookville were tiny, which was a good way to save on some space in my suitcase. Fierce yet almost pointedly flat and documentarian in tone, Kristof portrays with a disturbing level of detail and directness an implacable message of loss. First, she is forced to learn Russian as a child. With the Soviet takeover of Hungary, Russian became obligatory at school. Next, at age 21, she finds herself required to learn French to survive. I have spoken French for more than 30 years. I have written in French for 20 years, but I still don't know it. I don't speak it without mistakes, and I can only write it with the help of dictionaries, which I frequently consult. It is for this reason that I also call the French language an enemy language. There is a further reason, most serious of all. This language is killing my mother tongue. That's a very interesting little blurb there. I first heard about this, I believe Renee from The Left-Handed Reader picked this up from the library maybe a couple months ago, and it sounded very intriguing to me. I think the quote there at the end about like writing in French, I could be wrong that this was written in Hungarian, but I'm really intrigued by that kind of talk about like languages and translation and stuff, because it's just like mind-boggling to me the way that like words and languages work. I'm not going to get into it, but crazy stuff. Next, I picked up a signed copy of Her 37th Year in Index by Suzanne Scanlon. I read Suzanne's other book, Committed, on Meaning and Mad Women at the end of May, and I tore through that thing, and I really enjoyed her writing style, and I just thought that her perspective was really harrowing to read about because she was institutionalized for mental health reasons, and I would really like to read more of her. So when I saw this little signed edition, I just knew that I had to grab it. There's her signature. I believe that this book was also mentioned in A Horse at Night on Writing by Amina Cain. I have a list in my notes on my phone of books that were mentioned in that book, and this one is really like ringing a bell. So the synopsis of this says, Her 37th Year in Index is the story of a year in one woman's life. Structured as an index, the work is a collage of excerpted conversations, letters, quotations, moments, and dreams. An exploration of longing and desire, the story follows a moment of crisis in a marriage and in the life of a woman who remains haunted by an unassimilable past. Alan Gurganus called an early version of the work a thoroughly engrossing almanac of desire when it was published by the Iowa Review. And yeah, I think that this is playing with form a little bit, which could either really work for me or really not, depending on how it's structured. So this one's going to be kind of like a funky, different one, and I'm really excited to read more of Suzanne Scanlon, which is why I also picked up her other book, Promising Young Women, which is also signed. They were like having a Suzanne Scanlon moment at Exile and Bookville, which I was really excited to see. This is published by the Dorothy Project, and they had so many Dorothy Project books at Exile and Bookville. I purchased 3 others. I don't love the square shape of these, but I think the design otherwise is so stunning, and all of these books sounded so interesting. One of them I've already read, and I know that I absolutely love it. So I am wanting to get more into the books that they publish because I just feel like it's very up my alley. So Promising Young Women's description says, a series of fragmentary tales tells the story of Lizzie, a young woman who, in her early 20s, unexpectedly embarks on a journey through psychiatric institutions, a journey that will end up lasting many years. With echoes of Sylvia Plath and against a cultural backdrop that includes Shakespeare, Woody Allen, and Heathers. Loved Heathers in high school. Oh my god, I was so obsessed with that movie and the musical. That's a really interesting reference that I've never seen in books before. Suzanne Scanlon's first novel is both a deeply moving account of a life of crisis and a brilliant original work of art. So this seems like maybe the fictionalized counterpart to Committed, which was a nonfiction memoir. So yeah, I'm not sure if she's published any other books besides these three that I've talked about, but I'm really hoping that I love these two new ones since I've got these beautiful signed copies of them. The next Dorothy book that I picked up is Exposition by Natalie Léger. I don't know, you guys, I shouldn't be allowed to try and pronounce words. This was translated, I believe, from the French by Amanda DeMarco, and the description for this says, Exposition is the first book. That's not what it says. Exposition is the first in a triptych of books by the award-winning writer and archivist Natalie Léger that includes Sweet for Barbara Loden and The White Dress, which Exile and Bookville had both of those as well, but I just stuck with this one since it was the first one in the group of three. In each, Léger sets the story of a female artist against the background of her own life and research. Love, right up my alley. An archivist's journey into the self, into the lives that history hides from us. Also love, I think that's been a really interesting theme in books that I've been reading this year with My Death by Lisa Tuttle and The Last Sane Woman by Hannah Riegel. Just this idea of like female artists and writers that have been kind of lost to time and have lived in obscurity and kind of uncovering them. So I'm excited to add this to that grouping of books. I need to stop interrupting myself. Here, her subject is the Countess of Castiglione, who at the dawn of photography dedicated herself to becoming the most photographed woman in the world, modeling for hundreds of photos, including Scherzo di Foglia, among the most famous in history. Set long before our own selfie age, Exposition is a remarkably modern investigation into the curses of beauty, fame, vanity, and age, as well as the obsessive drive to control and commodify one's image. Love. Have not heard anyone talk about this book as far as I know, so if you've read it, let me know how you found it. I feel like this is going to be really different. I also picked up Event Factory by Renee Gladman. I've read one other of Renee Gladman's books, also last year when I was on vacation. Calamities was the name of it. It was a really weird, like, essay collection, kind of. It was really short and, like, fragmentary, and it wasn't my favorite thing ever, but Renee Gladman was also an author that was mentioned by Amina Cain in A Horse at Night. So I want to try her out again, and I think this is like the first in a series. I think like the second or third book in the series was what Amina Cain had mentioned, so I want to try it out and see. This does not sound like something up my alley, but we're going to go into it with an open mind. So the description for this one says, a linguist traveler arrives by plane to Ravica, a city of yellow air in which an undefined crisis is causing the inhabitants to flee. Although fluent in the native language, she quickly finds herself on the outside of every experience. Things happen to her, events transpire, but it is as if the city itself, the performance of life there, eludes her. Setting out to uncover the source of the city's erosion, she is beset by this other crisis, an ontological crisis, as she struggles to retain a sense of what is happening. Event Factory is the first in a series of novels Also available are the second, the Ravikians, the third, Anna Petova Crosses a Bridge, which is the one that Amina Cain was talking about, and the fourth, Houses of Ravica, that Renee Gladman is writing about the invented city-state of Ravica, a foreign other place fraught with the crises of American urban experience, not least the fundamental problem of how to move through the world at all. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really one for like more dystopian, but I think there's going to be some like exploration of language and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this works out for me. I'm cautious but hopeful. The last Dorothy Project book that I picked up was A Horse at Night on Writing by Amina Cain, because I had gotten this out at the library last year and I really loved it. She is basically just talking about writing and reading, and like I mentioned earlier, I have a list of all of the books that she mentioned in here, and I'm kind of going through and trying to check off as many of them as I can. And yeah, I have never seen this for sale anywhere, and I wanted to grab it since I already read it and loved it so much, and like it's just so beautiful. So obviously it had to come home with me. The description says, in Amina Cain's first nonfiction book, a series of essayistic inquiries come together to form a sustained meditation on writers and their works, on the spaces of reading and writing fiction, and how these spaces take shape inside a life. Driven by primary questions of authenticity and freedom in the shadow of ecological and social collapse, Cain moves associatively through a personal canon of authors, including Marguerite Duras, Elena Ferrante, Renee Gladman, and Virginia Woolf, and topics as timely and various as female friendships, zazen meditation, neighborhood coyotes, landscape painting, book titles, and the politics of excess. A Horse at Night on Writing is an intimate reckoning with the contemporary moment and a quietly brilliant contribution to the lineage of Woolf's A Room of One's Own or William H. Goss's On Being Blue, books that are virtuosic arguments for and beautiful demonstrations of the essential unity of writing and life. So yeah, this, I'm so glad to actually have a physical copy of it. I feel like this is a great contender for a reread eventually. So yeah. All right, guys, we're getting through it. Only 6 more books left to talk about. Oh my god. Do you ever just like realize that you have a problem? I also picked up The Besieged City by my girl Clarice Lispector. This is a relatively recent re-release of this book, I believe. The description says, rich with visions, miraculous horses, and linguistic ecstasy, The Besieged City stars Lucretia. Clarice Lispector's heroine is a materialistic girl free of the burden of thought. Behold, behold, all of her, terribly physical, one of the objects. The object, the thing, Lispector once remarked, always fascinated me and in a certain sense destroyed me. In my book, The Besieged City, I speak indirectly about the mystery of the thing. The thing is a specialized and immobilized animal. 7 decades after its original publication, Clarice Lispector's third novel, The Story of a Girl in the City Her Gaze Reveals, is in English at last. Lucretia is ready to marry. Her suitors, soldierly Philippe, pensive Pursue, dependable Mateus, are attracted to her tawdry, not-quite beauty, which is of a piece with São Geraldo, the rough-and-ready township she inhabits. Civilization is on its way to this place where wild horses still roam. As Lucretia is tamed by marriage, São Geraldo gradually expels its horses, and as the town strives for the highest attainment it can conceive, a viaduct, it takes on the progressively more metropolitan manners that Lucretia, with her vulgar ambitions, desires to. Yet it is precisely through this woman's superficiality, her identification with the porcelain knickknacks in her mother's parlor, that Clarice Lispector creates a profound and enigmatic meditation on the mystery of the thing. Written in Europe shortly after Clarice Lispector's own marriage, The Besieged City is a proving ground for the intricate language and the radical ideas that characterize one of her century's greatest writers, and an ironic ode to the magnetism of the material. Clarice Lispector, Horse Girl confirmed. I also picked up a couple books by Annie Ernaux. I'm trying to complete my collection of her books, and we are getting there. The first one is The Possession, which I actually just read last week. I don't know, I just wanted like a tiny little book to finish in an evening. I needed a win, so I picked this one up. It was a 4-star for me. My review is up on Goodreads, and I'll obviously talk about it in my July wrap-up, but the description for this says, "The strangest thing about jealousy is that it can populate an entire city, the whole world, with a person you may never have met. These first words set the framework for the possession, a striking portrait of a woman after a love affair has ended. Annie Ernaux pulls the reader through every step of jealousy, of a woman's need to know who has replaced her in a lost beloved's life." Ernaux's writing, characteristically gorgeous in its precision, depicts the all-too-familiar human tendency to seek control and certainty after rejection. Ooh, fun. Annie Ernaux is consistently just one of the most, honest and transparent writers, and I really admire that about her, and that is no different in this book. I also picked up A Woman's Story by Annie Ernaux. The description for this says, "A Woman's Story is Annie Ernaux's deeply affecting account of mothers and daughters, youth and age, in dreams and reality. Upon her mother's death from Alzheimer's, Ernaux embarks on a daunting journey back through time as she seeks to capture the real woman, the one who existed independently from me, born on the outskirts of a small Normandy town, and who died in the geriatric ward of a hospital in the suburbs of Paris. She explores the bond between mother and daughter, tenuous and unshakable at once, the alienating worlds that separate them, and the inescapable truth that we must lose the ones we love. In this quietly powerful tribute, Ernaux attempts to do her mother the greatest justice she can, to portray her as the individual she was. She writes, "I believe I am writing about my mother because it is my turn to bring her into the world." I love that. I love a book about motherhood. We've established this on this channel, and this sounds like it's going to be a really different take on motherhood and mother-daughter relationships. So yes. And we also have a novel from Ernaux. This is Do What They Say or Else. I think this one is very much a lesser known one. It hasn't been republished by Seven Stories Press, which published those first two that I grabbed, or Fitzcarraldo Editions, which I have a bunch of her books from Fitzcarraldo Editions. So yeah, this one's kind of under the radar. The description says, originally published in 1977, Do What They Say or Else is the second novel by French author Annie Ernaux. Set in a small town in Normandy, France, the novel tells the story of a 15-year-old girl named Anne. I wonder who that could be. Who lives with her working-class parents. The story, which takes place during the summer and fall of Anne's transition from middle school to high school, is narrated in a stream of consciousness style from her point of view. Ernaux captures Anne's adolescent voice through which she expresses her keen observations in a highly colloquial style. As the novel progresses and Anne's feelings about her parents, her education, and her sexual encounters evolve, she grows into a more mature but also more conflicted and unhappy character, leaving behind the innocence of her middle school years. Not only must she navigate the often confusing signals she receives from boys, but she also finds herself moving further and further away from her parents as she surpasses their educational level and worldview. I really loved Ernaux's nonfiction book, A Girl's Story, which seems like it was about a really similar time in Ernaux's life. I read that one last summer and rated it 5 stars. So this seems like it's going to be a fictionalized account of that time in her life, and I'm hoping that I love it as much as I loved A Girl's Story. We're down to our last 2 books. What a journey it has been. I picked up Not a Novel, a Memoir in Pieces by Jenny Erpenbeck. She is, I believe, a German author. Her book, Kairos, has been kind of popping off online recently. I haven't read that one, but this one I'd never seen before, and I was like, ooh, a memoir, let's do it. The description says, Jenny Erpenbeck's highly acclaimed novel, Go, Went, Gone, was a New York Times notable book and launched one of Germany's most admired writers into the American spotlight. In The New Yorker, James Wood wrote, when Erpenbeck wins the Nobel Prize in a few years, I suspect this novel will be cited. On the heels of this literary breakthrough comes Not a Novel, a book of personal, profound, often humorous meditations and reflections. Erpenbeck writes, with this collection of texts, I am looking back for the first time in many years of my life at the thoughts that filled my life from day to day. Starting with her childhood days in East Berlin, I start with my life as a schoolgirl. My unconscious life begins at the same time as the socialist life of Leipziger Strasse. Not a Novel provides a glimpse of growing up in the GDR and of what it was like to be 22 when the wall collapsed. It takes us through Erpenbeck's early adult years, working in a bakery after immersing herself in the worlds of music, theater, and opera, and ultimately discovering her path as a writer. There are lively essays about her literary influences, Thomas Bernhard, the Brothers Grimm, Kafka, and Thomas Mann. Unforgettable reflections on the forces at work in her novels, including history, silence, and time, and scathing commentaries on the dire situation of America and Europe today. Why do we still hear laments for the Germans who died attempting to flee over the wall, but almost none for the countless refugees who have drowned in the Mediterranean in recent years, turning the sea into a giant grave? With deep insight and warm intelligence, Jenny Erpenbeck provides us with a collection of unforgettable essays that takes us into the heart and mind of one of the finest and most exciting writers alive. This is kind of like unfamiliar subject matter territory for me, as far as like East and West Germany. Like the most experience that I've had reading about that was with The Man Who Saw Everything by Deborah Levy, and that wasn't like, you know, super historical nonfiction, so this one should be interesting. And speaking of Deborah Levy, of course I had to get a book by her. This is Billy and Girl, and it is this gorgeous Dalkey Archive Essentials edition. I had picked up another book from this press from the library. It was La Bâtarde by Violet Leduc. I did not finish it because it was super long and it just like wasn't grabbing me, and it had to go back to the library. But Deborah Levy wrote the like introduction for that book, and she also has this book out with them. So yeah, I freaking love the way that they do their covers. They all are kind of like this similar vibe, and it's Deborah Levy, so hopefully I'm gonna love it. The description says, in this brilliant, inventive, tragic farce, Deborah Levy creates the ultimate dysfunctional kids, Billy and his sister Girl. Apparently abandoned years ago by their parents, they now live alone somewhere in England. Girl spends much of her time trying to find their mother, going to strangers' doors and addressing whatever Prozac woman who answers as mom. Billy spends his time fantasizing a future in which he will be famous, perhaps in the United States as a movie star, or as a psychiatrist, or as a doctor to blondes with breast enlargements, or as the author of Billy England's Book of Pain. Together they both support and torture each other, barely able to remember their pasts, but intent on forging a future that will bring them happiness and reunite them with the ever-elusive mom. Billy and Girl are every boy and girl reeling from the pain of their childhoods, forgetting what they need to forget, inventing worlds they think will be better, but usually just prolonging nightmares as they begin to create, or so it seems, alternative personalities that will allow them to survive and conquer and punish. In the end, the reader is as bewildered as Billy and Girl. Have they found mom and a semblance of family, or are, there's a comma in there that should not be in there and it's throwing me off. Or are they completely out of control and ready to explode? That like messed with my brain a little bit. Okay, so yeah, that is the final book in this haul. Like I said earlier, support independent bookstores. It's something that is, not that I need to like justify my purchases or anything, but it's something that's very important to me to do. It's something that I actively like make room in my budget for, and I just absolutely love building up my collection of books. I'm not trying to like push the consumerist agenda or anything here, but I don't feel bad when I'm supporting like small businesses. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this haul. Please let me know if you've read any of these books. I feel like I got some that are very like under the radar, and I would love to hear your thoughts on any of these. And let me know also what your favorite bookstore that you've ever been to is, because I'm in the mood to like research and look up bookstores. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!